They called me out. I'm like,
Good morning.
Morning.
Glad that you all got out of the garden so you could attend this meeting this morning. And my wife is canning, so and I'm sure that a bunch of you have been doing that. I welcome you. Thanks for attending this morning. We really appreciate it. And thanks to Adam for all the hard work of putting this thing together. We appreciate all your work, Adam, so thanks again. We have some new members. Sarah Watson Curry, the City of Moorhead. She replaces Heidi Duran. And welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
So do you have anything that you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Oh, it's on already. Good morning. I'm excited to be seated at the table. I've had the pleasure of attending this meeting in the audience, and I'm excited about the work that's being done. And I brought a guest with also, so if there is a local food need, I might just step aside for a moment, but brought my 4-month-old son, Aldwin. And I am excited. Heidi Durandon and I made a little switch. Her calendar didn't always allow for this meeting time to work, so I had a little bit more flexibility. And I think it's complementary to some of the other things. I also serve on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and some other things that sort of connect into the work that you guys have been doing. So, hi.
Okay, thank you and welcome. Next new is Chelsea Johnson. Chelsea is City of Horace, newly elected council member, right?
Yes, newly elected.
Yeah, you got to pull it a little closer to you.
I'm pretty green to all the government workings. I grew up in Horace, and I knew architecture out there at my father's firm. And I've been very passionate about food and health in my own life. So I think that this will be a good fit for me, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, now you got to learn that you got to plug your father's firm every chance you get. So what is your father's firm's name?
Prairie Design Studio.
Okay.
He's been out there since the early 80s.
Well, this is your opportunity to kind of pay back.
On the garden level, he does own an acre lot across from his house, and I grew up, that was his personal garden, the whole acre lot. So I grew up hoeing weeds for, a penny a weed. I maybe counted by fives. But then he got a till for his four-wheelers, so I didn't have to do that job as often, which was nice.
Did you help pay for that? You probably
Yeah.
wanted to do that. I'll chip
Yeah.
in and get that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, and congratulations on your win and the council member.
Yeah, thank you.
Our other guest, a new guest here, is Margie Bailey. And Margie has been former executive director for the Fargo Theater, and she's had a long, strong interest in foods. I know you've attended some of these before, so.
I think we all have an interest in food, but maybe I more than others, I don't know. And by the way, the connection here is that Sarah was my assistant at the Fargo Theater, which is just amazing. So it's sort of the food arts kind of thing. I've been involved in attempting to get together some synergy between the program at the School of Science, the culinary program at the School of Science, and connecting to hospitality management and other programs at NDSU, all of the ag programs. Meat science, grain. I was horrified to go into the meat lab, but it wasn't as horrifying as I thought it was going to be. But it's been a whole new world for me, and it's so great to have that kind of an opportunity after you retire. And so I guess I'm here because I truly believe that this is an incredibly important effort that you're all putting together. And I just love all of the aspects of this and all the creativity that's going into this, and it truly is an art form in every sense of the word. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm just here to learn. So thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Michael Olson, communications consultant. He's an independent contractor. He could not be here today, but he will also be on the steering committee. And the first item on the agenda is approve order and contents of the overall agenda. I have no changes that I know of. I would ask that a motion be given in reference to this. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion is made, Jim?
I'll second the motion.
Second is made. Discussion. And for those that are new, I always ask 3 times and everything, so I read that that was the correct way to do it. So, discussion. Final ask, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, review and action of minutes on May 9th, 2018. I would ask for a motion in regards to those.
I can motion.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? Motion has
Second.
been made, seconded, okay. Discussion. Discussion. Final discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commission check-in. What we do is we go around the table and you tell us anything that you think would be newsworthy and that we should know about, maybe some upcoming events or things that you've been doing and so forth. And why don't we, well, we'll start with our newest member.
To do a tie into solid waste, as I mentioned before, in the community ed newsletter, the catalog rather, there is a Master's in Recycling and Composting class that is starting, I believe it's 6 Tuesdays, and it begins at the end of this month. So there is 6 folks that are signed up, and they needed at least 5 to go forward, but there's room for more fun. So if you want to learn to talk trash, it's a pretty exciting opportunity, and this is the first time in the state of Minnesota, I believe, actually, that it's been posted. So it's
Okay.
pretty exciting news.
Great. Megan?
Megan Meardall with NDSU Extension in Cass County. Just a few things. Every summer, the Master Gardeners of Cass and Clay County organize an initiative called Veggies for the Pantry, where home gardeners can deliver their excess garden produce to one of 5 locations across Fargo-Moorhead and West Fargo. And then it's Monday evenings from 6:30 to 7:30, and then the extra produce is delivered to the Emergency Food Pantry, Dorothy Day, or Churches United for the Homeless. As of August 30th, they had collected 2,910 pounds of food. So there's still a lot of food to be captured. They're going to go through the growing season. So I have the flyers on the back table if anybody would like to grab one of those. And then Extension has been partnering with 6 other community organizations, including Growing Together, Farms, Family Wellness, to host a series of Field to Fork festivals this summer. In August, we did Cucumber Fest. In September was Tomato Fest. I wore a tomato costume. It was a fun experience. And then in October, we have Squash Fest, and rumor has it that the little one over here will be showing up in a pumpkin costume. So, but it's an opportunity for people to be at the Growing Together garden and learn all about food from field to fork. So we have food preservation taught by Rita. We have horticulturists teaching about how to grow healthy plants. You can tour the gardens. Mindy gives tours, a lot of folks around this table. So October 2nd is the next date. So that's my update.
Okay, thank you. Anything?
Well, I guess I could, a couple things that the city of Horace is doing that maybe relate are our yard waste. We're looking at a compost site, sending less to the landfill, so that's in the works. And we do have a housing development that is, we're working on bonding, that will have some community gardens kind of planned to go in that housing development. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Rita Yasadis with NDSU Extension in Cass County, and it is food preservation season. So I answer a lot of calls from people that think they knew what they did, but didn't do what they were supposed to do, and want to know how to save their product after they've done that. So that's kind of what I'm busy with as far as this committee.
You're kind of the 911 for this.
I am, yeah. And it's really heartbreaking when they call and ask, and I tell them they have to throw it all away. So.
I'm Mindy Grant. I'm a member at large from West Fargo. I also work at farms, and we do farmer training, and we're kind of gearing up for our new round of Farm Beginnings, which is going to be delayed a little bit this year. We're starting in December so that we can make sure all of our farmers and people looking for farm education can fully get through their growing season and get their work done before ramping up for education. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll be announcing more in November.
Okay, thank you.
Bukola Bakari, PhD student at NDSU. I'm super excited to share that the portable garden project has been kicked off, and we have 32 families that have the portable gardens now. And I tell you, they're so excited, and they've been sending pictures to the Facebook. So I will encourage each one of you to please visit the Facebook, and that would be facebook.com/portable vegetable garden. Please like the page and let people know that they are being supported. So we'll continue in that effort by collecting surveys and just getting people's opinion for moving further ahead with the project. Thank you.
Jim Osnes, Delaware City Council. We have a new development, Keystone Properties, 40 acres, probably about 100 homes, plus there's going to be commercial. We're going to have assisted living and a steakhouse, and we have a new street. 14th Street is done, and all the streets around the new development are in ready to.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I'm Adam Altenberg with the Metropolitan Council of Governments. One thing I can mention here is since our last meeting, our organization has approved 2 comprehensive plans for the area, one for Cass County and one for the city of Dilworth. Each of those plans actually, for the first time, addresses food systems for the first time. So that's kind of neat that we're finally getting some of the information, some of the things that we work on into documents that cities and counties can utilize in the future.
I'm Nancy Careview. I am a Dilworth City resident, and then I also work for the Great Plains Food Bank. I have a couple updates. One is it's Hunger Action Month in September, which I won't mention much about it because I know there's folks that are going to talk about it today on the agenda. But tomorrow is Wear Orange Day, and I left some calendars in the back if you want to do any action items for Hunger Action Month as well. And 2 other updates I have is Glean and D, the project that we piloted through some of the grant through the Cass Clay Food Partners. We have Glean and D that we've had 3 successful gleans now, and I would say last night was our 3rd one. So I don't know what the poundage was that they were able to get from that, but I'd say it's about 6,000 pounds we're probably getting close to that we've gleaned so far this season, so that's really exciting. We had a goal of 4 to 5 gleans, and so we've done 3 already. We have at least 1 more coming up with the potential of another one, and so we're really excited about that. And then we're going to hope to do some evaluation come the end of harvest season to see what we can change, how we can expand, and different evaluation tools. I have some cards too. If anyone is unfamiliar with it, I can leave them in the back and then pass them around as well for Glean and D. And we have the best place to keep up to date is our Facebook page. So Facebook/Glean and D. And then the other one I have is that the Great Plains Food Bank is having, it's funny, I made the same announcement in May, but we're having another pop-up perishable in Clay County, which is super exciting. This time of year, we get a lot, Minnesota offers produce through Minnesota Department of Agriculture, where farmers get paid for that produce that they donate to the food banks. And so we get a lot of Minnesota produce because we serve Clay County. And so on Thursday, September 27th, we will be doing a pop-up perishable in Dilworth, and the Access Clinical's parking lot. So we'll have fresh produce, and anyone is welcome to come to that. And we encourage people to bring their own bags and boxes because there's quite a bit of that they can get, and you don't have to bring any sort of referrals or anything like that. Anyone's welcome.
I'm Barb Whitteman and Cass Clay Food Partners, and I'm pleased to announce that with 50 Concordia students and 60 fourth graders during Hands for Change on August 27th, we bagged 1,243 pounds of dry edible beans that went to the emergency food pantry for their shelf. My college students are now researching hunger topics, and they will begin teaching the fourth graders next month.
Okay.
Good morning, Mike Thorstead with the City of West Fargo. As always, there's a lot of great things happening in West Fargo, including our West Fest celebration this weekend. But I don't have anything really to lend to the discussion here, but sure like to see you in West Fargo this weekend.
I'm Kim Lepetsky from Fargo Cass Public Health, and we are currently working with farms out of Bismarck to hold interviews for the new Farmer Task Force Project Manager position, which we hope to hold next week, and hopefully we'll have that position filled soon to help with some of the training for future farmers. Well, I guess you've already heard from me, but I have a question that I'd like to float out to the whole group, including all of you out on the perimeter out there. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading an article in the Star Trib on food waste, and they referenced a film called Wasted that has Anthony Bourdain, and who unfortunately we lost, but Dan Barber is also in that film. And Dan has been to North Dakota a couple of times and Minnesota a couple of times, and he's the Stone Barn guy from upstate New York, and the International Culinary Center connects with him. And so if you're doing a farm-to-table kind of a culinary program, that's where you go for that. So anyway, has that been in this area? Has it been in Concordia? The film Wasted is a documentary, and it's in wide release at this point in time. So I thought that might be something, if we haven't managed to get it to Fargo, maybe that's something that we can think about getting. I'm a big believer in documentary films. Yes. Wasted? Okay. All right. Well, maybe I'll check with their film department too. Okay. Thank you.
Hallie Duran, Cass County Planning. The announcement that I would like to state is that we do have our North Dakota Planning Association conference. It's tomorrow, however, but there is a food topic presentation that will be given, and that information can be shared at a later date too.
Jenny Mojo, Clay County. I'm happy to see that we've got some Clay County employees here that will be presenting early or later, so the real work is happening with those guys. Just to follow up on something that I think I said in the spring, Clay County has moved forward with a partnership with Pheasants Forever to turn some county-owned property from flood buyouts into pollinator habitat. And so we will be restoring 7 acres south of Moorhead into pollinator habitat with the hope that classes, 4-H groups will be able to go out there in collaboration with University of Minnesota Extension to kind of use that as a learning tool. So that's exciting. And other than that, my children have raised livestock all summer, and so now we're in the process of getting some pork and duck and chicken meat for our freezer. So that's what we're doing.
Nikki Johnson with University of Minnesota Extension and NDSU Extension, and I don't have any updates right now. So.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Noelle Harden with Minnesota Extension, and I'd like to share a new opportunity that we have. I don't have a handout, but you can check out our website for the Action Learning Seed Fund. It's a combined kind of mini grant program with intentional networking that we'll be accepting applications for through November 1st. And then the program will run through 2019. And it's for those individuals and organizations who are working to create a healthier and more equitable food system. And again, it's the Action Learning Seed Fund, and our website is z.umn.edu/Action Learning Seed Fund, all one word.
Thank you. Thanks for all the good information. We will move on to item number 3, federal nutrition programs at farmers markets, and this is by Megan.
So I am filling in for Whitney today. As some knew, she was expecting and she had a healthy baby boy in late July, so she is spending time with him. So at our May commission meeting, we had a presentation about this blueprint. And Whitney did a great job walking us through the whole document. So typically, for those who are new to the commission meetings, what we do is we have a presentation on these documents and we accept feedback from the commission. And then if there's any changes that need to be made, those are made, and then it's brought back to the next meeting for a vote for approval. And there were no changes made to this document over the summer. So this was the document that was presented in May. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, if you've had any thoughts since our May meeting, or if not, I would ask that we make a vote to approve this.
Okay. Any questions for Megan? Any questions, discussion on this draft?
I'll make a motion to approve the presented document.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Discussion. Now's your time to ask questions or make a comment. Discussion. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will ask that all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. And we have number 4, Community Snapshot Food Waste. And our first presenter is Brianna Erickson, Concordia College. Okay. And I believe you have a PowerPoint.
I do. It's
Okay,
up.
great.
Could I add one thing before Brianna starts,
Sure.
if that's all right? So for historical reference, since we started the commission in March of 2015, we have been creating these blueprints, which is what we just saw from the federal nutrition programs at farmers markets. And what Brianna is presenting today is kind of a different version of how we're sharing information. There is a lot of great resources that have already been developed related to food waste and food policy. So what we did instead of a blueprint this time was create a community snapshot to give us an idea of what is already happening in our community on the food waste front. There's a lot of different actions that are already happening. So this is a document that's essentially trying to capture what's happening in Cass and Clay County on food waste. So it's less of a policy-focused document and more just trying to give us an idea of the activity in our community. So.
Okay. And we're going to have 3 presenters total.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
And to kind of add on to what Megan just said, a lot of you have mentioned programs that I am also going to mention, and you're all heavily involved in it. So if I skim over something or don't give it as much detail as you would if you were up here presenting, know that I think we all think all these programs are fabulous, and they're all greatly contributing to the reduction in food waste in the community. But so yeah, I'm just going to give a snapshot of what we're doing as a community to reduce food waste. And to start off with, I just have a couple of statistics for you. According to national research, about 25% and estimates even as high as 40% say that this amount of food waste, or this amount of food is wasted in households across the United States. This is equivalent to about 23 pounds of food per person per month. And in a recent article I was reading by the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, to kind of give you more visual representation, they said this is equivalent to about 320,000 jumbo jets of food going directly to landfills each year. So that's kind of a lot. And people in the community with these statistics, they have decided to take action. And we've been doing quite a few things, being an agricultural community. However, there are a couple of hurdles that we would like to overcome. One of those being a lack of a municipal site that accepts food waste for composting and anaerobic digestion. And we're going to hear more about that from the Clay County side. But also a residential food waste collection program. In areas such as Austin, Texas, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, they've instituted a curbside collection program, or places where you can go and drop off your food waste scraps. And so we would like to see some of that in our community as well. So now I'm going to go over the many things that we're doing in our community, starting with community education. The Ad Council and Natural Resources Defense Council have going on what's called the Save the Food campaign. It's recently come to Fargo and Moorhead in the form of billboards. You might have seen a billboard with a milk carton that has the best if used by label, kind of emphasizing that just because something is past its use by date doesn't mean you need to throw it out. Also, the Fargo South High School DECA students have done their own mini food waste research and campaign, and I'm pretty sure they presented to this commission, and so I won't go too much into that, but for anybody else, you might have seen them at Hornbacher's handing out reusable grocery bags and little tags that give information on how to reduce food waste in households. There's also the SNAP Ed program. SNAP provides monetary benefits for low-income families so that they can afford nutritional food. And SNAP Ed is the educational side of that. Recently, the government has extended what SNAP Ed does to include food waste education. So we're excited to see what happens there and what is happening there. Ugly Food of the North is an organization of citizens in the community. And this is one of those programs where I know they do a lot, but I'm just going to focus on one thing. One thing that they do is they promote taking, those ugly vegetables, the bruised ones, the carrots with, 3 tails, and creating meals out of them to bring to community potlucks where they talk about food systems and food issues in the community, amongst many other things. So also we have Washington Elementary and Concordia College. This was also mentioned previously, but first year Concordia students go to 4th graders at Washington Elementary, and they educate them on food. They've educated them on food waste and helped them perform little food waste research of their own. These little 4th graders, they track how much juice and milk is thrown away and perform assessments, and this research they present to the public, which is really cool that we're targeting a population so young. In the food retailer area, many local breweries are donating their used grains to farmers to use to feed their livestock. Coffee shops are donating their used coffee grounds to composting sites. And grocery stores are donating their leftover food or their produce that is going bad to food banks. Some grocery stores of note are Cashwise, Prairie Roots Food Co-op, and Walmart. We also have the government and nonprofit organizations involved in this. Clay County Solid Waste Management is beginning to, well, we're hoping that they begin to accept food waste, but I won't go into that since we're going to hear more about it. Glean ND was also mentioned previously. I've had a little bit of experience with this program. It's a really great program where volunteers go out to the fields and capture the produce that was left behind after the harvest, and that produce is then donated to the food bank. And like was mentioned, thousands of pounds of produce have been donated so far. Great Plains Food Bank has their daily bread program. I think currently they have 3 trucks that go out once a week collecting food from grocery stores and other organizations that have leftover food that they then distribute to food pantries. Also, another program that was mentioned was Veggies for the Pantry. And as you heard, that's just where people take their produce left over from their own gardens and take it to a drop box where the master gardeners can pick that up and take it to the food bank and other food distribution areas. And the Red River Food Market has a goal of having 0 food waste. And so at the end of their events, any leftovers are taken to be donated. We also have businesses and schools. I'm a little bit biased, but I think Concordia College is doing a really great job with eliminating food waste or reducing it, and we're going to hear more about that. Doubting Thomas Farms, they collect food waste for composting, and one program that they have is, I'm going to mess up the name. It's like Taking Back Jack. Yeah, Taking Back Jack, and it's really cool, especially with the Halloween season arriving. They collect pumpkins that, such a cultural part of us that we use to make jack-o'-lanterns or whatever for Halloween, and they send those to composting, which, we don't really recognize our jack-o'-lanterns as food waste, but it is. And so we have that program, keep them in mind this season. Hospitals in the area, such as Sanford and Essentia, are using more advanced food programs to help in their menu planning to kind of reduce food waste before even making it. Sanford also donates their leftovers to the food bank. Something that I got to see personally this summer was share tables at the school. In your handouts, you have listed that West Fargo and Moorhead participate in share tables, but Fargo Public Schools also does, and this is just where one of the criticisms of the National School Lunch Program, or I guess it's just the school lunch program now, is that by forcing these children to take foods that they wouldn't choose on their own, there's a lot of food waste created. Well, we now have these share table programs where children that have food that they're not going to eat, they can take their food and go put it on this communal table, and then other children who are hungry or who didn't get enough to eat can go and pick up that food, or that food is taken to a nurse's office for students that come in needing food throughout the day. So that is a little brief summary of what we've done as a community, but what more can we do? Some ideas that we have are conducting a food waste assessment to find that measurable baseline, which is really important so that we can measure our progress and what we're doing as a food waste reduction in policies and other things going on. We also are hoping to shift resources to start a municipal food waste acceptance site. And education. This is in the form of educating people about backyard composting and about meal planning and things like that. We also are hoping to recognize organizations and people in the community that make efforts to reduce food waste. And through doing this, hopefully together as a community, we'll see more improvement than we already are. For those interested in learning more or finding tools to help them reduce food waste in your own organizations, there are these great websites, endharger.org or the Environmental Law Institute and the Environmental Protection Agency all offer like toolkits and other ideas for helping people to reduce food waste. Also, we have Kim Lipitsky, who is kind of involved in all of this, and she would be happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? Hearing none. We move on to Brett. Brett, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite, Megan. So, I'm Brett. This is my coworker Chase, and lately we've been looking at ways to utilize food waste. And we just don't want it to go to the landfill. So to begin with, we do want to emphasize that we love the programs that Brianna just talked about. And we also emphasize at every meeting we go to food waste producers that we don't want to promote food waste, but we want to promote food redistribution, food reprocessing, all that stuff. So starting on the front page of the pamphlet, there's 2 pictures of examples of what anaerobic digesters might look like. There's a lot of different designs, but those are just 2 that we thought might be feasible, and it's also able to attach new anaerobic digesters on to it easily. So if there's more food waste as Fargo and Moorhead keep on growing, that we'll be able to contain that capacity and hold that. So for those of you that don't know what anaerobic digestion is, you can open up the first page, and there is a part on the left that kind of explains the processing, and then a graph on the right. So anaerobic means without oxygen. So an anaerobic digester is an organics processing facility that decomposes food waste, organic waste, and then without the presence of oxygen, and then the bacteria release methane that is utilized for heat and electricity. And then also in the brown box is something similar to a compost. It's a little higher moisture content, and then it's utilized for a nutrient additive for farmers' fields. Currently, right now, the wastewater treatment facility in Moorhead gifts those biosolids to farmers as a nutrient additive, and the farmers really, really like it. So I'm gonna hand it over to my coworker here.
Well, the biosolids that are left. Well, the biosolids that are left over from the anaerobic digester can be utilized for many different things, such as composting, nutrient additive to apply to farmers' fields, and livestock bedding. And if you flip open to the final page, you will see what Brett and I have been working on for the past few months. We have been meeting with colleges, universities, grocery stores, etc., to see who would be interested in participating in food waste recycling, and also analyzing the volume of their food waste.
So to kind of sum it all up, before we put in a big initial investment for an anaerobic digester or another processing facility, we want to make sure that there is the organic volume available. And we've also been working or contacting Tipton and Quest, who Walmart works with to do meat rendering and different things with the food waste. So right now, we're still in the preliminary phases, looking at pricing, and we just want to make sure that all the food waste can be utilized, and this is a last-stop shop. So we have a lot of different ways we could go, but right now we have to look at the numbers and hauling fees, et cetera. So, any questions or comments, or?
Yes, we have one.
Well, I know in a normal composting situation that's aerobic, you don't want any meat waste or animal byproducts in there. Is that true of the biodigesters as well, or can you also just include the meat waste?
Anaerobic digesters are heated up between 100 and 130 degrees is a mesophilic digester, which reduces about 75% of the pathogens within meat. So it's much more contained and much more clean versus composting is outside and much less regulated with pests coming in, with odor nuisances, stuff like that. So yes, with anaerobic digesters, pathogen reduction is huge. And that's a great incentive for it. So yeah, anything at the wastewater treatment facility, that's what all of the sewer system goes into. So yeah, definitely able to do meat as well.
Any other questions?
What is the response you've received from the different businesses, colleges, restaurants with this idea? Is there interest? Are you hearing people saying that they're on board and would like to see that waste? And then where are you at with your need to hit the volume of organic matter to make it a viable?
Well, to sum up the first question, there's been a lot of positive responses. A big thing is not increasing their price for hauler fees. So all restaurants, all businesses, they all have a break even. So that's one thing we've really been looking at, is not increasing their prices. And as far as the second one, there's many different options available right now. Personally, I would foresee that we would break even, but with the different options available, we haven't looked at operating and maintenance fully. So we haven't looked at all the different possibilities of anaerobic digesters. And like the wastewater treatment facility, they have 3 550,000 gallon anaerobic digesters. So we've been meeting with them, and they're working with an engineer to kind of look at how feasible that would be for them. And yeah, so there's just a lot of ways for it to go right now. And down in Purdue University, down in West Lafayette, Indiana, they're actually already doing this. And we talked with NDSU, who actually gave us a contact over there for David Henderson, who we've been in close contact with about their cost reduction with providing methane to use on-site for heat and electricity. And it is going very well for them, so.
Great. Other questions? Comments?
And if I do recall, you guys are interested, if anybody knows of businesses or groups that might be interested in being on board for this, if you're interested in looking for potential businesses, right? So if we have ideas for them, we should share with you?
Yep. Yeah, that'd be awesome. We've definitely been meeting with a bunch of people and contacting many different institutions, but yeah, the more the merrier. And also if there's any reprocessing facilities that can make this food waste into non-perishable items, dog food, animal feed, we are promoting that extensively, so.
Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, Brett and Chase, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very interesting. Next, Taste Not Waste campaign at Concordia College, Meredith. And Joan?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Meredith Wagner. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Nutrition, Dietetics, and Exercise Science at Concordia College, and I'm joined by Joan Copperwood. She's a professor in the English department. Both of us have a strong personal interest in food waste reduction, and so we partnered in the summer of 2016 to make a concerted effort on Concordia's campus to reduce food waste. And so just a little bit of background about Concordia College. Our dining service is owned and operated by the college, and we have had dietetic interns specifically who, from the inception of the dietetic internship at Concordia, which was back in 1999, have been tracking food waste in our dining center for a variety of reasons. But really what we've done is more recently, when Joan and I partnered up, was we looked at this data and we're like, why are we not sharing this? Why are we not doing something more about this? And that's really how the Taste Not Waste campaign came to be. And so what we do is each semester we collect food waste in our dining center. So we specifically look at front of the house food waste. And so that is anything that is prepared and served on the tray line to customers in the dining center. We have done back of the house, which would be any food that's prepared in the kitchen. We've done plate studies or waste studies there, but where our focus of the Taste Not Waste campaign is really the front of the house waste. And we have defined plate waste as edible food waste. So if you think of an apple, if it comes back with one bite out of it, we actually cut the remaining edible portion off the apple, and that is considered plate waste. Whereas the core itself or a banana peel or a chicken bone is not counted towards the waste. So everything that we measure and weigh is actual edible food that is otherwise going to waste. So we started the campaign officially in October of 2016, and we did with a baseline measure. So as Brianna mentioned, it's a really important component to have a baseline measure. So where are we at? Our goal for Concordia, which was announced by President William Kraft in November of 2016, was a 50% plate waste reduction by the year 2020. And so 50% of what? So in October of 2016, we did our baseline plate waste study, and we determined that the daily average of pounds of plate waste for breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Concordia College was 329 pounds. So if you do the math, the monthly average is close to 10,000 pounds. The exact number is 9,870 pounds of edible food waste that was, again, going in the garbage rather than in to the bodies of people who could use it. So as kind of a visual comparison, that's equivalent to the weight of a Chevy Silverado pickup. Okay, so we were wasting close to 10,000 pounds per month in 2016. So that was our baseline measure. We do a plate waste study. It's a 2-day study over all 3 meal periods at Concordia and find the average amount. We do this once every semester. So we did it in October and then in April, again in October, April, and then we'll do one coming this October. In October 2017, so 1 year later, we did the same plate waste study. The daily average decreased to 278 pounds. And the monthly average went down 8,350. Okay, so we were able to see a significant reduction. And Joan is going to talk a little bit about the efforts that we've put forth to help with that reduction. So that represented a 15.39% reduction in plate waste over the course of 1 year. Okay. Again, our goal is 50% reduction by the year 2020. So our most recent plate waste study was done this past April of 2018, and we saw the daily average decrease to 202 pounds, and the monthly average was 6,074 pounds. So altogether, that represents a 38% reduction in overall plate waste since October of 2016. So we essentially have 12% left to go. We are very excited. We've worked with the entire campus, reached out to them. We worked with various community organizations as well, and we're really hoping that we could do it as early as this year in terms of reaching that 50% reduction. So I will turn it over to Joan.
You might be wondering why somebody from the English department is presenting to you. And just by way of just a tiny bit of background is that I was teaching a first-year writing course, and I had organized the course around food. I'm kind of a foodie and enjoy that topic. And so I organized the first year course around food as identity, culture, and conflict. And so students did a field research, and so they participated in one of the dining services studies. I thought it was going to be kind of a one and done with that, course and so on. But what the students found out, again, the initial statistic that Meredith provided is, and I was shocked. I know that Americans waste a lot of food. You see the statistics, but you don't think about how that totals up. And Concordia is no different than Moorhead State, NDSU, or any of the other. When somebody gave the average amount that we waste in our households, I think someone said 23 pounds per month per person. So that 10,000 pounds is a shocking statistic. And my students said, we have to tell somebody. You have to tell somebody. I mean, so just the information, I think, is what students said. And I think Concordia students, like many of our young people, they said, we just didn't know. So it's not their intention to be so wasteful. And they also didn't know that it turned into methane, which is certainly deadlier and more potent than CO2. So they said, you have to tell others. So as I organized the course again, then we decided to do something more formal. Meredith and I got together, and we had an initial grant that got this off the ground. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own, and we're very excited about the progress that Concordia is making. So how are we doing that? We thought maybe that would be of interest to you. And I think one way, again, we've had students that are giving us some suggestions, and one student said that something, visual, that's really helpful to us. So we do everything from table tents in the dining service as reminders, sometimes with statistics or other visuals. We've got near where students put their plates on the carousel. We went trayless many years ago, so students don't have trays, because we found out they tend to heap up their trays. And so if you have to carry, your dishes, that reduced it by about 10%. But the statistics stayed flat after that, so we needed more efforts. But near the tray return, or the dish return, we've got a couple of big visuals that talks about being responsibly engaged with the world. That's part of Concordia's theme, but it begins here with us. So as they make their own decisions about what they're taking for their food. So we've got strong visuals. Last year, I worked with organizing, we have a portrait photography class, and so I asked that professor if he would be interested in pairing with dining services about getting some photographs. So they're learning their photography in their course of portrait photography if they would work with some of the local growers. And so again, we had really nice, very large photographs hung outside the dining service. So again, the student body, they're learning that their food doesn't just appear, that it really comes from real people and growers. And so that was a very successful photography exhibit. We also, again, there's a number of things visually. We also try to host events. We have a scrape your own plate event where, again, we've got a large scale, students scrape their own plates. So again, I think that action, that type of event where they have to scrape their own plate rather than just putting it on the turning carousel and their food disappears. Because like many dining services, they swipe in, they go get their food. In Concordia, it's a buffet, all you care to eat. And so they get their food, and then they eat what they want, and then it just disappears. But there are real people scraping and cutting, when we do the studies, cutting the apple core away when we do this study. So we thought that would be helpful. And I think we've done 3 of those throughout the semester, and I think that has contributed to the awareness. Again, students said we just didn't know. We also try to get some kind of high flyer people behind the table scraping, such as President Kraft. We've had coaches, we've had a variety of people, and sometimes, again, we think that helps connect students to their choices. I think hosting a film on campus, like like Wasted. I know different professors have used Just Eat It and other food waste films, but again, getting Wasted, I think would certainly be a good activity. I think also in small groups, kind of one to others. And Meredith and I both have spoken in classes. We've made ourselves available, having like Barb Whitteman in her class. She's got 2 sections of this class focused on hunger. So then those students tell other students, and I think that that's helpful to us. I've presented to Concordia has an Emeriti organization, and so I have presented on our statistics. And again, even as adults, they're often saying, we just didn't know. So just raising the awareness is really helpful. We had a national food waste activist on campus as part of a grant. Jonathan Bloom was here. And when we told him what our goal was, the EPA and the USDA, they've got a goal of reducing food waste by 50% by 2030. But what I haven't been able to see what their 50% of what. I mean, that would be a nice national goal, but I'm not sure what their 50%, where their starting point is. But that's where the idea came from, is that I thought Concordia can do better. So we can do 50% by 2020. And Jonathan Bloom said, yeah, I mean, kind of like, that's really an ambitious goal. But I don't know if he thought we could do it. But when we contacted him this spring after our last study and we were down by 38%, he was just astounded. So we're keeping him in. I've had Megan to my class, and she spoke on Ugly Food of the North and gave students, again, I think some current and local statistics, and just raising awareness about ugly food is just as good as regular other food. So we've worked with our orientation leaders. They work with the first-year students because changing a culture around food waste is really important. So we have worked with, we tried to identify large bodies of students that we can contact. Athletics, working with our ensemble, our music groups, our choirs, because again, we have hundreds of students involved in athletics and music and first-year students. We also work with Residence Life at trying to raise awareness. Can you put up bulletin boards in your dorm? Can you get this into your conversation? As especially when a new school year starts, they often encourage their dorm RAs to eat with their floor and so on. So raise that topic. We also in our dining service have little spoons, little disposable spoons for tasting that are organic, that they decompose very quickly, but to taste, to sample the spoons, and so trying to raise awareness of, especially on a buffet, tasting before you take it. We've worked with the news and the media. We've had nice coverage in the forum about what we're doing, trying to raise that awareness. The local student newspaper, the Concordian, as well as having a Facebook page and social media and so on. We partner a lot with dining services. They're helping. They've got screens, computer monitor screens in several places within the dining service. So again, we're trying to keep the awareness on students' plates, if you will. So I didn't know how many people there would be, and I brought 13 or 14. That's all I had. But we had a student organization, student group related to a class design. That's where we came up with the Taste Not Waste. And so again, the visual is to have our logo. So students begin to recognize both the logo and the phrase Taste Not Waste. So I'll just send one of those. So that's what we have.
Are there questions for Meredith Jones?
I have a question. Are there any studies or statistics that you're aware of that compare food waste on a pay for your plate or pay for your dish system versus just a buffet system? Is there any difference that's noticed in that?
I do know that there are some articles out there. I don't know that I could speak to them. It is something that we have talked with our dining center about. There certainly are different models, so like a pay per plate is some organizations, even restaurants, will actually, you pay based on the weight of your plate, right? And so certainly there are incentives then for someone, if they're paying for it by weight, to eat everything that they take. it's not something that our dining services could do at this point, right? They're pretty well established. They had a major remodel back in 2009. But there's definitely information out there that looks at that, so.
Other questions? Comments? Very interesting. Thank you very much. Any others? Okay, thanks again. Okay, well, that brings us down to item number 5, Metro Food Plan update. Adam?
I'll come up here and talk.
Well, good morning again. I'd like to just talk briefly about the steering committee's efforts on the Metro Food Plan update. If you recall, at our last meeting in May, Noel and I talked about how this update is going to be structured, kind of basing it off of the core values of the Cass Clay Food Commission's, talking about food systems that are supportive, inclusive, and resilient. So throughout the summer, we had a number of pop-up public events just to bring about awareness for this plan. So we had meetings at 5 different locations throughout the summer. Our first meeting was at the special edition of First Fridays on June 1st. We also had a pop-up meeting event at Prairie Woods Co-op on June 16th. We were at Streets Alive on June 24th and at the Red River Market on July 21st. And then we were at the first Field to Fork Festival, the Cucumber Fest, on August 7th. We did have an additional event planned. We were supposed to be at the second Sunday of Streets Alive in late August, but unfortunately that was rained out, so we weren't able to attend that. But at each of these pop-up public events, we had postcards that we gave out to people if they're interested to comment. And it featured a couple of open-ended questions, but one of the questions that we focused on is, what changes do you hope to see in our community's food systems over the next 5 years? And we had dozens and dozens of conversations with people, but we had 151 unique responses to that individual question, that people took the time to write down something that they thought was important for us to consider with regard to our community's food systems. So and I apologize, some of the numbers are a little bit hard to see. We started we made an attempt to kind of break down the responses that we got, kind of depending on the categories that people were talking about. And one of the main category that people, based on the comments that we received, thought that we could be doing a better job, or an area that we should be looking at in the future was with regard to food access. And a couple of notes with that. A couple of comments that we received was just more CSA, community supported agriculture. So places where people can pick up a garden box every week or so. It's, according to the comments, it seems like that's something that we haven't seen as much of in the last couple of years. Used to be more support for that, or used to be more opportunities for that. And I think people would like to see more of that in the future. Additional community gardens was another comment that we saw a number of times. Also, and along with that, just information on how to get involved with those gardens and where those gardens are located. That was something that people were talking about. Year-long farmers markets, we saw several comments related to that, and also more markets within the area and locations and dates where people can, instead of potentially having a market just one day a week, if that market could be open 2 days a week, just to provide better food access, better access to those markets that way. The second category that we saw just fell in more just kind of general awareness and education with regard to food systems and healthy food options. A couple comments that we saw with that is just more opportunities to learn how to cook and prepare food. I know Extension, Public Health already does a good job about doing that, but that was a comment that we saw. Food preservation techniques, including canning, as another comment that we saw a couple times. And also additional, several comments talked about additional resources that could be shared with schools. including resources that students could take home to their parents about healthy food or food preparation or that sort of thing. Going with some of the topics that we talked about today, food waste was the third most common response that we saw in the comments that we received. So looking at composting, looking at ways of reducing food waste in the community, and also partnering with commercial businesses, restaurants, and institutions such as hospitals and schools, in ways that the community can work towards that. Urban agriculture was another area that we saw comments. A couple specifics to that was protecting pollinator habitats that came up a couple of times. Promoting rooftop gardens was another comment that we received, as well as front yard gardening and gardening options on or near apartment building complexes. That was something that we saw. The other comments that we received, healthy food and nutrition programs, it was more or less just continuing support of those programs that we see already in the community. Economic development, the one comment that we received with that a number of times was the need for a food hub in the area. So a place where farmers in the area can bring their surplus food that can then be doled out to other organizations within the community. And then another comment with regard to economic development that we put in there was chef training courses or chef training classes or opportunities in the area. Cultural celebration and collaboration, so basically just kind of celebrating the culture of food that we have already in the community. Producer engagement, a couple of comments that we received with that is if there's a way of or a program that could be instituted to bring people out to local area farms so that they can see where their local food is coming to. That was something that, I don't know if we really talked about that or if that's really been discussed beforehand, but I thought that was a neat comment. Supporting charitable programs and collaboration with those was another comment. And then at the very end, we just have an other category, and with that, it was emphasis on our organic food in the area and also financial incentives. So very, very simple next steps here. We're hoping to have a draft of this plan ready for our November meeting. That's our goal. And if it looks good by November, our hope is to have this plan approved in early 2019. So that was very quick. If you have any questions, be happy to take them at this time. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that some of the public input was based on having garden access and apartments.
Yes.
Was there any public input on vertical parking, like within a warehouse or for apartments?
Yes, I can remember there were two comments that were related to vertical farming in the area. But yeah, that did come up.
Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah. Sure. In addition to the public comment cards, we did have a survey, a web link to a survey as well. It should be Metro. I'll have to double check with that. We do have a link to our website at the Metropolitan Council of Governments, but it's something SurveyMonkey, something Metro Food Plan. I can talk with you after the meeting too.
And I can say too, on CastclayFoodPartners.com and .org, there is a public input spot. So if anybody goes and puts input there, we receive an email on what that is.
Okay, other questions, comments? Questions, comments? Hearing none, thank you very much, Adam, appreciate it. Good questions. We're down to number 6, and Cass Clay Hunger Coalition. Stacy.
Well, good morning, everybody. My plan for today is to talk briefly about the history of the coalition, talk a little bit more about the Hunger Action Month, and talk about where we're going. So when we think about Hunger Action Month in September, it's Feeding America, and it's a network of food banks. Each food bank then has its own network of food pantries and feeding sites. We do three things. We're out there to spread the word about hunger, taking action, and dedicating ourselves to a solution. And so while I talk today, I really do want to weave in a story of Jonathan. Jonathan is a 5-year-old whose family came to the food pantry, and his mom's eyes were just down. I mean, she didn't want to have any eye contact with people that she was there, and feeling really challenged. Her and her husband work opposite shifts. They have one car. They are able to then not have to worry about that second car. They don't have to worry about daycare. But the reason that brought them to the emergency food pantry was they needed a car battery. And just that one expense really pushed them over to the top of needing a food basket for us. And so thinking about the experience that they had specifically with us was being able to come through the food pantry and get a number of different food items. So the history of the Food Coalition, it's been around for a number of years. I do not have the historic details. We'll learn more about that at the Hunger Summit in October. But just very generally, it was looking at health, hunger relief organizations and advocate to really network, gain support, plan events, just really have some awareness out there. There was a hiatus of the Hunger Coalition, and it really came back in 2015 when a food pantry closed. And the conversation at that time was to say, what are we doing? Now, this food used to be going to this food pantry. Clients used to be going to this food pantry. How are we going to continue to meet that need, as well as can any of the pantries take on this additional food that that food pantry was receiving? And so when we were meeting, it was that maybe every few months we'd kind of be thinking about what we as food recovery agencies are needing. And really, the biggest thing we decided to really try to establish, not take a ton of time to figure out our mission, but just say that the previous mission had been to educate, coordinate, and partner in order to look at our systemic change to reduce or end hunger. And so again, without having to try to mince through words, we felt that that was a good place. Now, the thing we want to be very cautious of is what is the Hunger Coalition compared to all the other efforts that are happening. And I think the reason that we feel that there still is a place for us is to recognize that not all the families who are receiving help really are heard. And we want to make sure that even when we're talking about some of the other solutions, it may not work for some of our families, like Jonathan's family. And so it's really deciding at the time, some people were saying, you know, as a food pantry or as a feeding program, we want network within ourselves versus how do we reach out to a larger group. And I think the thing that we've looked at is when we focus on our current network here through the Great Plains Food Bank is 21 food pantries and 4 feeding programs. And so there are a lot of different efforts already happening. And just recognizing that the food bank's relationship is helping source food, being able to distribute that out to all of North Dakota and Clay County, Minnesota. And then each of our smaller programs are more typically giving food directly to people. And that's the system that we've been using for quite a while. Skip a couple slides. So I think the other thing to think about is how are we dedicating ourselves to finding a solution? And I think mostly we think about how do we solve hunger? People need food. But we need to be able to think a little bit bigger beyond that, because our historical way of doing that was find the food and get it to the person in need. If you were at First Fridays, you saw a few of these slides of really it's the producers and farmers and ranchers getting out to the manufacturers and the grocery stores and getting them to a hub like the Great Plains Food Bank. And from the Great Plains Food Bank, getting it to the hands of the people. And you think of that as a really linear way of following the food, right? And it was much more about the transaction of where the food was moving versus maybe some of the longer term effects that are actually affecting people like Jonathan. And so really stopping and saying, we need to focus on the people that are in need and not just be focusing on the food that's out there. And taking the broader look to say, you know, the solution to ending hunger isn't necessarily the food in the right place, but it's understanding the underlying causes. It's understanding poverty, figuring out the unique needs of each of the individuals and families coming through, and also taking some stand on how are we reducing barriers for that. At a national conference recently, this is a very dark picture here to see, but really the idea is to say we need to put the person who's needing help in the middle. And although we have a really strong network of at least 25 organizations specifically helping to get food to people. We have to also be thinking about the transportation and the education and food safety, and there's so many other layers, employment and training, and what are we going to be doing as a network? So it's really stopping to say, how are we focusing on this? And it comes down to right here in our neighbors, 1 in 9 people are living in poverty. And you can look at the big numbers and you can look at the nation and really think about this, global need for hunger. But I also just talk and say, when you're out shopping, when you go to the bank, when you're driving down the street, if you stop and just look and saying 1 in 9 people around us are struggling with their day-to-day needs, I think it's a place that we need to start focusing on. So I'm going to bring it back to Jonathan's family. So what we know at the food pantry, emergency food pantry, is they came in, we helped them. We are able to give a lot of different foods. The one main thing that their family does is they eat breakfast together. And so Jonathan was able to have peanut butter, and he loves having peanut butter toast with his family because that's his family time. And by the time he left, he was skipping out the door with his peanut butter in one hand, and we had toothbrushes also, and so he was having those. And Mom looked up, and she had tears in her eyes, but she felt a whole lot better about being there. And, she, with tears in her eyes, she was still super, super grateful and thankful that we were there. Now, it feels like a success. It's definitely something that we accomplished. But right now, with our 25 feeding programs and food pantries, we don't know if Jonathan is out there getting food from other places. We don't know if they're struggling and not having other needs being able to take care of. And so one of the biggest things that the Hunger Coalition that we will be doing is starting to data share. So historically, Dorothy Day Food Pantry and Emergency Food Pantry, the 2 larger food pantries in the community, really try to have very similar service. So we do have what we call a choice model, which means that families come in and they physically get to choose what types of food that they want and what types of food that they're going to use. Again, historically, it would have been thank you, family of 3, for coming in. Here's your food box. And we've seen across the nation that there's food waste, obviously, with that. So we're all doing food, I should say a number of us are doing the food choice, but for sure Dorothy Day and us. We're also really trying to implement a lot of the whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, and currently we're using the same database. Now, that doesn't mean that our database is talking to Dorothy Day's database, but it is showing the collaboration that we're willing to do in our community and really trying to work forward to say, how are we going to do that for the whole network? So right now, each of the times a client comes into us, they're issued for the first time a card. If you think of it like a scannable library card, it helps us with our data. The next time they come in, we can just scan them in and that data is done. So what we need to be looking at is what things we need to implement about confidentiality and data sharing, not for the fact if Jonathan's family is coming to both of our places that they're going to be denied food, but for us to start understanding that if they're using 5 food pantries and they're also having needs in other ways, what are we going to do as a system, whether it's the Hunger Coalition or other people in this room, to be able to say we're actually going to get to the core issues versus just getting food onto the table. So my little peanut butter toast for Jonathan. I think I already kind of shared the end of the story with him, but it's just a joy to be able to recognize that there are efforts that we can do. And when we think about the Hunger Action Month, it's really bringing it back to spreading the word about hunger, taking action, and really understanding, dedicating yourself to being a part of that solution. So the last slide is just contact information, whether it's specifically for the pantry or the Hunger Coalition. And if there's a moment or two longer, I am open for questions.
Any questions? Any questions, comments? Stacy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's very interesting and a good story about Jonathan. Number 7, we open it up to public comment, and this is the chance for the audience to speak up or give us some information, questions. Come on up one at a time. I see one. And please just state your name and if you're with an organization or whatever.
Well, good morning. I'm well acquainted with a number of you on the commission, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Allison Brennan. I am a postdoctoral research associate with the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, or NCRCRD. And I'm also a resident of the city of Moorhead. And so really I'm up here today to say thank you. I'll try to kind of keep the backstory brief, but brevity is not really my strong suit. So my husband and I were formerly Fargo residents, and we moved to Moorhead about a year ago. And we moved at just about the same time that backyard chickens became a thing in Fargo. And so we moved into Moorhead, and obviously Moorhead has not yet adopted an ordinance in support of backyard chickens. So instead of backyard chickens, we started raising meat rabbits. And before we acquired our domesticated rabbits, we were sure to go through the city ordinance and make sure that no one was going to come haul them away. And so right now we currently have 10 domesticated rabbits. And if we're talking about food waste, these guys are amazing. They eat watermelon rinds, they eat the ugly cucumbers that nobody wants, right? They eat a lot of that we would just, banana peels that we would just normally throw away. So we're having a great time with that. And so I have really been paying attention to the conversations around backyard chicken keeping. I have a really good friend in Fargo who is doing that, and we actually barter with her. We trade produce from our garden for eggs from her chickens, but we would really like to have our own. And so without getting overly political, kind of hanging out, waiting for the tides to turn with this election cycle. And after November, we'll get kind of a feel of the political landscape, and then I fully intend to be a resident champion of the cause and mobilize my friends and neighbors. And so really my thank you that I wanted to express my gratitude for you as a commission for developing the Backyard Chickens Blueprint, and just say that is an exceptional document. It's thorough and comprehensive, and it will be an instrumental tool, resource for us as we approach our community members and our elected officials to try to see some action on this. So thank you. I just think you deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. I'm Barb Villella. I am with the Prairie Roots Community Fund, but more importantly, I'm a Fargo resident, a North Fargo resident, and am also food insecure. And so I just wanted to let you know that your being here today means a lot to me personally. It also means a lot to me professionally. The Prairie Roots Community Fund was started this June to increase food access to people in Census Tract 6. Specifically, that is the Madison School District, also McKinley and Jefferson, and we've been kind of partnering with as many people as we can in those neighborhoods too. We have 3 different vistas. My job is development, so it's fundraising. We also have Jen Walla, who is community outreach, and then Nikayla Peck, who does education. So we're hoping to start community gardens in that neighborhood, or garden projects actually is what we're calling it now, because we've been getting a lot of feedback. We've been in the neighborhood going to events and talking with people, and they want more community garden projects. So like in their neighborhoods, in their homes, in their backyards. Also, hopefully we'll be building a community garden somewhere near the Madison School, and then adjacently Jefferson and McKinley as well. So we are there for 3 years. So this is just my hello, and so for sure for the next 3 years we're going to be working strategically in those areas. But I heard several groups in this area were looking on feedback and kind of what neighbors, and we're kind of hoping to get a community center started over there too. And we're just really engaging with residents because we didn't want to come in. We've heard from lots of the residents in that area that people have come in, they've asked questions, and then they just kind of disappear. And so we're hoping to bring light to this, that we're going to come in, we're going to ask questions, but we're not going anywhere. We're actually going to be, Officer Bloom is a great resource officer in the Madison area, and we get to go to school lunches and talk with the kids. We brought a bike blender out to Fargo United's picnic on Friday, and then we went to Jefferson's on Saturday, and our bike blender was making cucumber salsa. And if you've ever seen kids so excited to ride a bike, they didn't even want to do any blending, they just wanted to ride the bikes. So it's a bike that on the back it has a blender attached, so as you pedal it, it mixes the things up. And so we're just trying to find different cool engagement pieces to work with the community, also parents, grandparents, any type of family dynamic two moms, two dads, any type of community. We want everyone to feel involved, that all are welcome to join us, and we're looking to partner with other organizations too. So I wanted to introduce myself and say hello, but ultimately I am a community member, and I just want to say thank you as well for all your work that you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Next. Okay.
Good morning, I'm Mara Solberg, and I have a farm south of Fargo. I've been here before, and just wanted to say thank you again, and to tell you that I notice a change in our community between the farms in the area and us. I'm noticing there's connections happening with where farmers are being recognized, farmers are helping with things in Fargo with gardening and everything, and an example is on our farm. I get asked often now if my animals would be willing to take some food that's not that's not edible anymore. Would they eat that? And I've had women come out that are older who want to not waste food now. They're really interested in that, so they make a day of it, coming out to my farm and watching the animals eat the cobs of corn and everything. So it's been really neat to see that. So I'm really happy about all that this committee has been doing, and I just want to show my support. And I do talk about you often in good ways. And another thing is, I just started. I learned about how to dehydrate, and so I started dehydrating today tomatoes as we speak, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I did say to a friend the other day that I was dehydrating, and she said, I know, I feel bad, I am too, and I was talking about dehydrating. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, thanks a lot for the participation. We are now down to number 8, and we've gone around our table, but you may have thought of something or want to bring something else up. So it's a round table for us. Anybody want to bring anything up? Okay, one.
Just one thought that I had was we have our city newsletter, and some of these topics would be really great to incorporate a section into that newsletter. So I would love to incorporate any of your guys' ideas there.
I think that's a great idea, and for everybody. I mean, if there's a newsletter that you ever put out, some organization, maybe a little tidbit. I bet Rita and Megan could help out on some of that.
For volunteering. I'll share
Okay.
one other thing. I know that these are coming up on our action steps, but First Fridays at B is our Cass Clay Food Action Network. That's where we meet the first Friday of the month to network and learn about different topics in the food community. And we had our fall kickoff last Friday in September 7th. And we were actually talking about hunger in Fargo-Moorhead. And Stacy was one of our presenters and had a great conversation. And the first Friday that's coming up on October 5th is about food commerce and community building, and how farmers markets and public markets not only provide a space for people to purchase local food, but they also become community places where people network and feel engaged and connected with one another. So Joe Burgum and Simone Y, who run the Red River Market, will be speaking at that one. So it's free and open to all. And then it says there Health and Hunger Summit, but it is Hunger and Health Summit, so I want to make sure that we're using that clearly. But that is an event that's coming up at Dakota Medical Foundation on October 16th. And a lot of what Stacy shared in her presentation, that conversation is really going to be a continuation off of some of the things that are happening during Hunger Action Month, and really trying to create a close connection for people to understand how intertwined and important it is to connect health and hunger together. So speakers from Essentia Health, Sanford, our local food pantry, and food bank and food pantries. So it'll be a great half day of learning. So it's from 8:30 to 1, and you can follow the Cass Clay Food Partners Facebook page. You'll see more details on there about that.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Then the next item is under 9 and our November meeting. I got to tell you that I want to say thanks to Adam. I'm always amazed. We're going to get out of here on time. He schedules things very, very well. And he ran into a scheduling problem for one of the meetings in November. So Adam, you want to tell us what happened?
And we knew about this a little bit earlier, but with Veterans Day in November, a couple of City of Fargo meetings got rearranged. So our normal meeting date, the second Wednesday of the month, is booked for this room. But we have been moved to the first Wednesday. So instead of meeting on November 14th, which I think is in the original schedule, we'll be meeting on November 7th at the same time in this room.
And I bet you we'll get to take a poll again before we get the meeting, right? Yeah.
We'll have the doodle poll.
Doodle poll. Yep. So you'll get reminded again, but why don't you put it on your schedule? And is there any further business? Anything anybody'd like to bring up for further business? Because if it's not, the next motion I ask for is for adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make one.
Yeah, I figured you would, Joe. That'd be good. Is there a second? Come on, Mike, second it.
Come on, Mike.
All right, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We don't hear you. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great day.
Styrofoam, food waste, syringes and medical waste,